how the people are doing. So, the iPhone 14 Pro review, man. I know I'm a little late, there are a lot of videos that I have to finish up with all of the other phones, so, not exactly ideal, but regardless, I would say that this is probably the most interesting iPhone that we have had since the iPhone 10. The iPhone 10 was a huge refresh compared to all the other iPhones we had before, and this is, sort of following in its footsteps. Maybe not as iconic of a change, but it is still different, very different from what we have had in previous iterations. And well, all that's nice and all. I'll do this review in the form of pros and cons. I think that'll be easier to explain my thoughts. And of course, before we do anything, I have to talk about that price, because it's not exactly like a con, it's outrageous. Because, in India, this thing costed me 1,30,000 rupees. That's ridiculous. It's ludicrous how unbelievably expensive things are in India and in some other countries. It's just, I feel besieged, besmirched and beguiled by it. It's absolutely terrible, it's unfair and unjust, and I need to stop talking about it because otherwise the review is not going to happen. So, forgetting the price for at least a section of this video, let's talk about the design. It's the biggest change and I like it. Undoubtedly, it is a very nice design now compared to any other iPhone that we have had, but it is compared to any other iPhone in particular, because yes, compared to all the notches that we have had thus far, this looks far better, sure, and there's no doubt about that, no one is arguing that. But having said all of that, compared to the other Android devices which are sort of like the competition to the iPhone, this still looks kind of dated, wouldn't you agree? It has more bezels, it's got a much larger notch instead of the singular punch holes that we have in most cases. Yes, I know, Face ID, we'll get to that. I'm not saying that's a problem or anything like that. It is a technological feat, but having said that, it is still a very nice design upgrade and I appreciate it. Now the back, obviously it is exactly the same as we have seen last year, maybe slightly bigger, slightly thicker, and with the camera module, and that's it, nothing more. So let's move on to the display, which is, sort of an underrated thing about this phone. It is immensely bright. It is 2000 nits, the brightest display I've used thus far in any smartphone. Nothing even comes close. Even the S22 Ultra, which had 1700 nits of brightness, and I always praised the brightness on the S22 Ultra because I take a lot of photos in sunlight, and at that time having a really bright display helps so much. And this thing is like above and beyond bright compared to the S22 even, and that is just a 300 nit difference. And just so you know, most Android flagships tend to have around 1500 nits of peak brightness, and the iPhone with 2000, it's in a different league altogether. That's very plain and simple. At least to my eyes, the difference is basically night and day. But of course there are other things that are really good about the display. It's very smooth 120Hz refresh rate display. We've got adaptive 120, and this time the adaptiveness has gone up a little. You can go all the way down to 1 Hz. It also gives us the iconic always on display. I say iconic for a very good reason, we'll get to that. But the display, for what it is, for what it offers, is probably the best you can buy right now because of just the sheer brightness alone. SDR content looks great. HDR content obviously looks amazing. We have Dolby Vision on this one, which is incredible. And yes, the dynamic island is also part of the display, and I can see the appeal for those who will get usage out of it, but I just don't. The few times that I play music, yeah, it's kind of nice to see the integration into the UI, but is it necessary? I don't see it, at least not in my use case. Let's just say that it is nice to have, but if it were to disappear tomorrow, I probably wouldn't notice for at least a few days. That's basically what I'm saying here. But for credit where due, at least Apple went a little bit beyond what they were supposed to with the dynamic island, so credit for that. And then of course, since we are talking about content consumption, the speakers. This has definitely seen an upgrade, because I clearly remember complaining about the iPhone 12 speakers and the iPhone 13 Pro speakers. All of them sounded very tinny and like they lacked a certain low end. Content consumption on this has gone up by a lot, and it It looks amazing, sounds amazing. I'm very happy with what Apple has done with the display and the speakers. So with that said, the performance side of things, I mean, look, the 14 Pro and Pro Max, they have great performance. They are the fastest smartphones that you can buy right now. You know, they have the most powerful chipsets that you can buy right now. That's fantastic. But don't go for the 14 and 14 Plus if you're just looking to upgrade. You know, it would be better to shell out for this despite it being a fair bit more expensive, because 14 and 14 Plus, they have the same chipset. I think you guys know about this already. I don't have to go into the details. They have the same chipsets as last year, and it's not a good look on Apple's part, because they're just basically trying to sell you the same phone just refurbished. I don't know, it doesn't seem like a good move to me. With that out the way, obviously, performance is never going to be an issue on the 14 Pro. Well, let's talk about the battery. This is where things get interesting, and this is where I think the always on display needs to be mentioned, most importantly, because that's where it affects the phone and the experience the most. Yes, I love always on displays, and I really like the implementation that we have on Apple's end. It is something that can very easily ruin your battery, or if you're smart about it, it can give you a very unique looking always on display that doesn't necessarily impact battery all that much. Now it really depends on what your lock screen wallpaper is, because simply said, you need a very dark wallpaper. You need something that has a lot of pitch black areas in the wallpaper, and that way when the always on display dims that wallpaper down, it'll shut down a lot of the pixels in the display, and that is what's going to save you the most battery. I tried it out, and quite simply, the difference in standby time is very noticeable, and it is very important that you know that this is how the always on display works. This is exactly how you can customize it, and based on the kind of wallpaper you choose, your battery life will be affected by a fair bit. You're not gonna have any issues with the regular battery life and the regular efficiency of the phone. That is still stellar. The standby time is something that you're really gonna have to figure out and just basically nuance a really nice wallpaper that looks cool and also helps you save up on a ton of battery when you're using the always on display. And the always on display is very nice, and it is definitely something Apple needed to do, so I'm very happy they did that. And well, I guess we could consider the battery to not be in the pros column. It's not exactly perfect, it's not as good as previous year iPhones, especially if you use that always on display, but it is still a really good battery, so I do think that it should be in the pros column. It's not a bad battery life after all. Let's just talk about the final incredible thing about the iPhone, and then we can go down into the weeds and talk about the stuff where it really is lackluster. And that is videography on the iPhone 14 Pro. Do I need to tell you that it's the best? Because it is the best. And if you want to take good, really nice, consistent 4K video, this is it. This is going to be as good as you can get right now. There are some phones like the S22 Ultra which have inherently good video, and they do come kind of close, but I mean nothing really comes close to the sheer quality of the video you get from the iPhone. And by the way, if you really want to go crazy and you want to shoot ProRes video, make sure you guys go for the higher storage versions. I know that's going to be even more expensive, especially in India. I mean, that's a ridiculous, unfathomable amount of money that you're spending on just an iPhone. But yeah, if you want to use 4K ProRes, you need higher storage options. And well, the rest of the videography is as incredible as you'd expect. I did notice that there was this little issue with white balance when using the ultra-wide camera. Now, that was during a very overcast day, it wasn't exactly ideal conditions that I shot the video in, so did notice some issues there, but the overall experience is basically the best you can buy right now, so it's kind of a small issue in what is otherwise a really nice videography experience. And of course, I'm not just talking about regular 4K video, I'm talking about the 4K cinematic video. The details are so crisp now, it just looks good. I just wish edge detection was a little bit better, like the S22 Ultra, I know for a fact it has better edge detection than the iPhone, but it is limited to 1080p. Now the action mode, yes, that is definitely something I need to talk about, because You know, as nice as the stabilization is, it's almost basically as good as the S22 Ultra, maybe a little bit better in some cases if you're really just booking it and you're running around the place. But I don't know how many people actually want to do that, but if you are, then action mode is there to help you out. It's a 2.8K resolution that really makes the biggest difference in the world. The details are just so much better compared to the super steady 1080p video that we get on the S22 Ultra. I mean, it's not even a comparison, to be entirely honest. And with this new sensor that we have on the iPhone, we have seen a lot of upgrades with regards to low light video. The nighttime video that I took with the iPhone 14 Pro here, it was shockingly good. Just all around, you know, any kind of lighting situation, more or less, you're gonna get amazing video. Now the only thing it really lacks is good 8K video. I've heard some rumors about maybe it's going to get added because it's capable. The iPhone does have a 48 megapixel sensor which can shoot 8K, technically speaking, but we don't have the feature yet. And finally, the 2x sensor crop. By far, the best sensor crop that we have. This is, I would say, about 99% optical zoom quality that you're getting out of what is supposedly a digital crop. You know, Apple definitely outdid themselves with the sensor crop. This is the most interesting and the most impressive thing that we have here. What I really think Apple could have done to improve this is basically give us the 1x zoom, the 2x sensor crop, and then a 5x periscope zoom. That would have really extended the overall zoom range, and right now it's just 1x, 2x, and 3x. That's the only realistic zoom that you have where you're going to get good quality. And now, finally, having said all of that, all the good stuff, we're finally getting down to the one thing that basically broke my experience for the iPhone 14 Pro. I'd been having fun with the iPhone. I don't get to say that very often. And yes, there are other issues with the iPhone, like, you know, it's not very comfortable to hold with its edges and everything, especially because I am not a fan of iOS. I don't like to use iOS at all. I've always preferred Android. I like the customizability on Android all the time. Any day of the week, I'd pick Android over iOS. Personal preference, obviously. But I'm just saying, that's the experience. Despite iOS, I really enjoyed using the iPhone. But then, I took some photos which were backlit. And I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. The photography is, sadly, not up to par. Especially even for the $1,000 price tag, there are phones out there that can do far better photography. And this one, it's... The problem that I have had most is that in a lot of cases, there are white balance issues, there are desaturation issues. I mean, there are extreme desaturation issues with some selfies that I took. I remember that very clearly. And of course, that HDR problem, it just ruins a lot of images. Like, if you want to take sunset shots, you're probably gonna get terrible shots with this. You might get a good one. There's a fair possibility of that, but it's a toss-up. It's like playing Russian roulette with your photos, because I remember very clearly I took this beautiful sunset shot on the S22 Ultra versus iPhone 14 Pro camera comparison. By the way, links to the playlist for all of these phones, they're in the description. And well, it was terrible on the iPhone. The S22 looked really nice, oversaturated, but it was a beautiful shot on the S22. And that's the problem, you see. The iPhone, it's sort of thought of as this, you know, low customizability, high perfection device, and the photos are the opposite of perfection. You know, the portraits are good on the iPhone. I like that the processing will focus on the subject, and you know, it'll expose for the subject, it'll give you good contrast on the subject in particular in portraits, and that can generally look very nice. I do like that part. Selfies, you know, they're fine, but you face the same issues. The HDR is not good, the white balance is not good, and there are, at least for my case, there have been many instances where there was a ton of desaturation, and that just did not look good to my eyes. But anyways, with all that in mind, you know, should you buy the iPhone 14 Pro? Well, it really depends. If you want video, yes, absolutely. If you want really good content consumption, once again, yes. If you're looking to upgrade from something like the iPhone 12 and you have been waiting for a design change, well, there you have it. But if you want photography, don't buy the iPhone. Now, of course, if you're a pro photographer who just wants to use ProRAW, that is probably the only exception, because ProRAW is really good on the iPhone. It's a really nice mode. You can do a lot of things with it, so that's impressive. The 48 megapixel mode itself with ProRAW is very impressive. So that's probably the only niche where the photography is going to be good on the iPhone indefinitely. But with that said, I do hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys found this helpful because, you know, there is a specific audience for it, but regular casual photographers like me, just not gonna happen. And of course, let me know how you guys feel about the iPhone, if you have been using it, have you been experiencing similar issues, as I said. And well, I'll be seeing you guys soon enough with some more camera comparisons, especially for the Pixel and the Moto. Cheers!